This episode of Top to Bottom is sponsored by Noted Analytics. Are you tired of losing sales opportunities to the status quo? Not seeing meaningful information in CRM to help close deals? Empower your team with Noted Analytics, the first guided selling for CRM platform that uses sales methodologies like gap selling, Medic, and others to revolutionize the way revenue teams capture, evaluate, and measure sales process effectiveness. Start increasing win rates, shortening sales cycles, and growing average sales prices today. Check it out at notedanalytics.com.
And we're live.
Welcome everyone to episode 40. It's a big day of sales top to bottom. So we have a couple of surprises today. Min, what is the first surprise that we have for everyone?
The first surprise is Keenan is not here.
Keenan is not here. So we're going to roll with this episode solo. So something happened. I don't know if I'm allowed to share this, but something happened with one of his daughters, I think. And so he's in urgent care. So we're going to do this episode solo. And the sad thing is this is going to be a really special episode because this is number 40. So if y'all would do me a favor, number one, don't log off just because Keenan's not here. I will do everything in my best effort to bring the heat and the pizzazz and charm of Keenan. Number two, if you would tag, y'all do me a favor. You're going to have to make it for Keenan's weight, and that's a lot of weight. So number two, if you would tag someone who is in sales, AE, SDR, in that role, we're going to be covering some really great meat content today. And number three, if you would not leave me up here alone. So this is like kind of one of my biggest fears, to be candid, like above death is having to pivot last minute. So do not leave me up here to die alone. So more comments, the better. More engagement, the better. More questions, the better. We're taking the podcast back to the people for episode 40. So we always start with a question. So Min, you're going to have to fill in the gap. What is your question for me for this episode?
Okay. Let me think about this.
You're going to have to bring the heat.
Yes. So next week we are headed to Inbound.
We are.
What are you most excited about going onto this trip?
Okay, so the most exciting thing about Inbound, this is going to be sad. I'll tell you my real thing. My fake thing that is exciting is I'm going to be doing a 90-minute session on discovery and unknown problems. My real thing is this is going to make everyone churn for sure. I basically logged on and I bought a pair of exclusive pants from Prabal Jurung, who's one of my favorite designers, in his fall 23 line. And now they're sold out. So I'm going to be wearing some red hot pants that I'm super excited about.
Hell yeah.
And that is the question.
Well, hey, with that, we are going on to the first segment of this podcast, which is
Email Teardown.
This is the segment where Becc tears down emails and messages that were sent over to her. And let's go on to the first one. This one was actually sent over to Keenan, and the introduction was, the subject line is Introduction, Jim: Sage. Jim, I'm reaching out to offer an introductory call on e-signature and workflow automation. For context, process automation initiatives with DocuSign typically aim to remove bottlenecks and gain visibility into paper, email, and disjointed processes. Accelerate time to revenue by easily preparing, executing, and managing complex sales quotes and renewals from within your existing CRM or ERP. Automate contract workflows such as approvals, redining, signing, and routing, and uncover risk, opportunities, and trends that keyword searches would miss by analyzing contract clauses and terms. What are your thoughts on connecting this week or next? Thank you, Sage Schmidt. Becc, what are your thoughts on this one?
So my thoughts, I know what Keenan would start with. He would start with, they called him Jim. So there's no quicker way to get him into Z. There's probably some quicker ways that I know of, but calling him Jim is going to be a no-no. But the second thing that I think is most important about this email is they're talking about accelerate to revenue, accelerate to ROI. And I see this very commonly in emails. One of the biggest lowest hanging fruit from a discovery perspective that I see people nail, discovery, cold email, cold call, is they start talking about the ROI of the platform, or the time saving or the cost saving or all of that. And while that's all fine and good, if you're saying the following words: save time, save money, more time, more money, less time, less money, leaving revenue on the table, you are in benefit centric, Phil. So what that means is that you are bereft of, unfortunately, an understanding of what key metrics does that buyer persona need to achieve. So more time or more money, it's not enough time to do what, or not enough money to do what. And so I would have to anchor around what is his business objectives as a CEO and founder to even be in the right rung. So it doesn't matter if I have more time, if I have plenty of time to do everything that I can get done, plenty of time to hit my goals. So that's my biggest take. Are there comments? Because I'm not even looking at the LinkedIn. If there aren't comments, I'm going to be.
There is comments. There
are? Okay, I'm so excited.
You want me to go through them?
Yeah, a couple. Just do a couple highlights. Y'all make some comments. This is my biggest fear.
For sure. So Brendan Cotro, sorry if I butchered your name. He says, come visit me while you're in Boston, Becc. Michael Gonzalez says, here's a touch of humor. When you watch Jaws backwards, it becomes a heartwarming story about a shark returning lost limbs to disabled people.
Not really sure what that means, but it's a comment. I'll take it.
And oh my goodness, this is a long one from Scott Cronin, frequent follower of
Why don't we do that in the second section then? Let's do Scott's comment in the second section. We only got 1:39. We got to get through both emails.
100%. This is the hold up. This is the next email. This one is their company intro, and it says, "Hi Becc, writing you from our company, a full-service PR and digital marketing agency. I noticed you are attending the Inbound conference. One of our account managers is planning on attending and would love the chance to connect. Any chance you would be free for a 30-minute intro meeting while in town? As some additional context, our company specializes in helping high-growth technology brands scale and successfully exit. We have experience across a number of industries," says all the industries that they work in, "working with brands including Indeed.com, Progress Software, Coupa, HubSpot, etc., and many others. Today, our team executes on both North American-focused and global programs, including support of several European companies who are actively expanding into the US. If PR, social, content, or digital research are on your radar, we would love to share more about our approach and capabilities and how we would support growth. Best, blank." All right, Becc, what are your thoughts on this email?
Okay, rapid fire. I got 30 seconds. Number one, they said, I noticed you're going to Inbound because they got it from a list, but they missed the fact that I'm speaking at Inbound. So credibility is gone from my view at that point. Number two, they talked about that they help high technology brands, which I'm not a technology brand, sorry. Number three, they talked about companies that are going to exit unless there's something that I don't know. I'm not planning on exiting anytime soon. And number four, they gave social proof of companies that are about 7 million times bigger than me.
30
That's
minutes.
it. I'm just going to punch it at that. Keenan, we're going to stay on time. And this episode, we're going to stay on time. Next subject, man.
The most punctual podcast in history.
By the way, this episode, there was going to be a surprise. The surprise is this episode is going to be anchored around gap selling and problem-centric selling topics. So I'm going to try and do these topics as much as I can, bereft of Keenan, sans Keenan. So that's kind of the theme of today's episode. So let's go to the next section.
And with that, we're on to the next section, which is
Sales Mythology.
This is the segment where Becc will demystify common myths in the sales industry. And the first myth of today is you should go after the future state at the start of the discovery. Becc, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so there's two basically states within the infrastructure of gap selling or any kind of methodology. There's current state and there's future state. So the current state is going to be all the things that are true today, currently. And the future state is their ideal outcome that they're trying to do. Oh my gosh, Keenan's here now. Keenan just logged logged in. Now Min's out. Min restructured it so there's only 2. So you kicked him in out. That's you know, you're fine. You stay on here. Did you see what the episode, what the content is covering?
Hold
Okay,
up.
so I think Min's actually still on the screen. So I'm just going to keep going. So the theme of today is gap selling and problem-centric selling. That was a surprise.
I cannot see
Correct.
Keenan, but Keenan,
I'm
if
not
you're
sure
on
if
the,
Min is live or if you're live.
I am
I'm really
live.
not sure.
I am live. Keenan, if you sign into the other account, I could bring you on right now live.
Okay. So I'm going to call Min and see if you're live or if he's live. Because I don't know if I should keep going. This is my biggest. Wait, hold on. Min, look at your phone.
I am indeed.
Min, okay, Min says he's live and you're not. Oh, okay, he says to fix it. So should I keep going, Min? Min,
Yes.
ping in the chat.
Keep going.
I'm just going to keep going. So Keenan, you can critique me in private, and I'm going to keep going on the topic. So the question is, the myth is that I should go after future state first thing right out of the gate within discovery. So the 2 states, if you will, within discovery are going to be current state and future state. Current state is going to be all the things that are true currently within the current setup and setup for the customer. And the future state is the outcome and ideally where they want to go. So the mistake that I see most reps making within discovery, and I hope that Keenan would agree with, he's critiquing me in private, essentially, is they go to the future state and where someone wants to go, but they don't anchor in around currently where are they today. So they have no idea of 2 things. Number 1, the gap that exists, because the gap is only going to be between where you currently are and where you want to go from an outcome perspective. And then number 2, now we're in triple stage. Number 2, you are bereft of all the things that you need to fix from the root cause perspective to be able to alleviate the current state, change the current state in a way that will be able to get you the outcome in the future. So most reps will say like, okay, so tell me about your SKO in the future, or tell me about the event that you're having, in a couple of months. And they'll anchor all of their questions around where does the prospect want to go hypothetically in the future, but they don't anchor in around all the things that are currently true about the organization today. So for instance, within a selling infrastructure, how many reps do they have? What is the current methodology that they're using? How are they at handling objections? What's the current open rate? What's the reply rate? What is the time of day that they're sending emails? What are the types of prospects that they're sending them to? How many booked meetings are they getting currently today? What is the quota? And so I'm calculating essentially the gap of the current state that they're at 6 SQLs versus the future state that they want to be at full quota attainment, which would be 10 SQLs. So I have no idea or handle on what that gap is. Men, do we have Keenan in now?
100%. Keenan, why don't you give us your thoughts on this one? This sales myth is
I can't hear you for audio. This is my biggest nightmare.
Oh, this is going to be
Should we start the episode over?
I can't be here that long.
Okay,
It's
we
all
got to
good.
start the episode. I can't hear Men.
Oh, you can't hear me.
I can't hear Men. I don't think he can do a setting change.
But Keenan,
Hello,
can you hear me
Becc.
well?
There we go. Okay.
Poor Becc. This is like a nightmare for Becc. This is an
Oh,
absolute
100%. I would
nightmare.
rather be dead than what's going on right now.
No, you don't want to be dead, Becc. You don't want to be
Okay.
dead.
So what do we want to do? We want to go into the second myth, or Keenan, do you want to start? You want to go into the myth of that you should go after the future state first within discovery.
Yeah, no, you don't go after the future state first. And you don't go after the future state first because, as I've always said, it's about change. And people will not change unless the current state is untenable or intolerable. So if you burn time, wasting time going after a future state outcome, you can either lose them or you give them no reason to change. But the minute you start picking at the scab, or you dig into where they are now and they start to realize, man, I don't like where I am now, or this is a lot harder than I realized, or I didn't understand that I have a bigger problem than I thought. Until you do that, there's no reason to change. But everybody understand this. And anybody want to argue with me, I'll go toe to toe with you. Whether you recognize it or not, nobody changes until their current state is untenable. Now we can have intolerable, and we can have conversations about the level of discomfort, the level of intolerable, because that directly relates to the cost of change, right? But no, you can't change unless if they don't like where they are, and so you can't sell them anything if they don't like where they are. So current state first all the time.
All right, perfect. Keenan, can you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
All right, perfect. Well, then in that case, the next myth of today is problem-centric selling and pain-centric selling are basically the same thing. What are your thoughts on this one?
Me.
Yes, sir.
Look, they're not the same. Pain is a ubiquitous concept that speaks to how someone feels in the moment, okay? Pain can sit at the impact layer, pain can sit at the problem layer, pain can sit at the root cause or technical layer. So the idea that you're supposed to find pain, I guess technically speaking in the simplest of terms, you could argue yes, but the problem with trying to sell to pain is it doesn't differentiate, and there's not enough programs, no programs out there besides gap selling that actually helps you understand the different types of pain and how to catalog those. And so I have a hard enough time getting people to understand problem, impact, root cause. I'm dead in the water if I'm trying to get them to understand pain 1, pain 2, pain 3, pain 4, pain 5, pain 6. So no, they're not the same, right? Problem is the specific business aspect that drives you to pick up your head and say, wait, something's wrong here. And your ability to find that business problem acts as the catalyst to why you should even evaluate what's happening and what's the impact if I don't change. It sits right in the middle. So you find the business problem, then you can say, oh, well, what happens if you don't solve that business problem? Or you know what happens. Gee, that's not good. That's the motivation to change the impact. I can't live with that. Okay, then why is it happening? And so that's why problem is right in the center, and you're going to find those. And here's the last piece. This is the best part from a selling perspective. Every business or every product in most businesses only solve 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 problems max. So it's easy to go find them. If you try to find pain, they're infinite. You don't even know where to look. It's overwhelming.
I think Min's frozen.
Am I frozen?
It's fine. I'll dig in. So, from my view, everything that Keenan said, amen. The other things that I would add is pain-centric selling. The difference between it and problem-centric selling is pain is any kind of negative experience, and a problem is going to be anything that you want to solve or solve for. So if you're pain-centric selling, you are, number one, only anchoring around things that the buyer already knows. Number two, you have no recognition that there are some pains that people won't solve for. You know, like things that are annoying that basically have no impact on me. So I'm like, I'll lose the time, to log into a certain platform, et cetera. It doesn't matter that much. But I think the biggest difference is it has no impact attached to it, which is the whole reason that people buy to begin with. So impact to me is just kind of an extended pain. You might have a current negative experience that's unfortunate. Like when I was using my phone back a year ago, I had the pain of I was losing a lot of charge. Was that painful? Yeah, it was super annoying. But I had a whole bunch of remote chargers that I could take with me. But then whenever I registered for the New York Marathon, all of a sudden there was an impact that was big enough that mobilized me to buy. It pushed me over the line. So like I wasn't willing to buy a new phone and go through all that pain of change and learning a new phone and blah, blah, blah until that marathon. And the reason was if I didn't finish that marathon and if I lost charge in the middle of the marathon, it jeopardized in my head, my mental state, so I wouldn't be able to finish. And if I didn't finish that marathon, I had a long history with running, but I was terrified that I wouldn't. And if I didn't, I was going to think that I was a fake for the rest of my life. And it was going to screw with like my mental state. So that impact was the thing that mobilized me to say, okay, this impact is big enough to where I'll buy. We're back on track.
Impeccable timing.
We're back on track. Episode 40 is lit.
Well, with that, we are on to the next segment of this podcast, which is
Take it or leave it.
This is the segment where I introduce common sales tactics, and Keenan and Becc let us know whether they would take it or leave it. And the first one of today is defending your price to a buyer. Keenan, what are your thoughts on this one? Take it or leave it.
It depends on how you define defend. Depends on how you define defend. So if we're defining defend as explaining why it's worth it, I guess I take it. And the only reason is my gut is say leave it, but here's why. It's just a weird definition. If you properly gap sell, you are so well positioned to defend it. And sometimes you just have to. Sometimes people get caught up in their own world. They're like, oh, wow, that's a lot of money. And I just simply have to say, well, I'm confused. You told me you're losing this much. You told me the impact is this. You shared if you didn't address this problem that you may not get your second round of funding. You told me it could jeopardize going public. You said it could, impact your ability to open new offices, blah, blah, blah. So, and all of this, is worth millions or tens of millions, hundreds of millions. I'm confused why you feel a $150,000 investment is too much. So is that defending it? I don't know. I think it's clarifying maybe, so I don't. So if that's defending it, yes. If that's clarifying, no.
What about you, Becc? Take it or leave it.
Well, I first of all want everyone to give a round of applause for Keenan for doing this one from an urgent care. Like if everyone can give him love in the comments for dialing in from an urgent care for episode 40. I mean, look at that.
I did leave my daughter's room though. I did leave the room. I didn't do it in front of her.
So from defending a price, I'm going to take it if you hypothetically, I'm going to say leave it for the word defend. Anytime that you're defending, you're in the child ego state. And I'm going to leave it how most people would think about defending their price.
Yes.
Think about defending their price based on, oh, well, my tool is so great. And don't you see the value of it's awesome and it causes so much ROI. But I'm going to leave it in, or the opposite one.
Take it.
I'm going to take it. Sorry, I'm going to leave it for those two. But I'm going to take it if it's you're defending against the size of the problem that they need to solve, which is where no one gets. That it's not, does this tool work or is there ROI? It's, does it solve this massive problem? And if you're defending, to kind of Keenan's point in his book, like that buying this tool will alleviate a huge problem. If buying a $2,000 tool will alleviate a $200,000 problem, then that is hypothetically how you would think about it from a business perspective. So I'm a take it if it's that, but I rarely see it done as that.
Okay, the next one of today is trying to persuade a buyer in discovery. Becc, take it or leave it.
I'm gonna leave it. I saw a post about this and they were like, isn't persuade and influence the same thing? We should persuade people. And I'm like, yeah, but persuading has a negative context. So I looked at the difference. Persuading is trying to make someone believe something. And influencing is affecting something by the way of changing it. So a doctor influences. They find a misdiagnosis or a misdiagnosis and they change the buyer's behavior because they found that. Doctor's not trying to persuade a patient of anything, but they are trying to influence them by a way of change. So persuading a buyer, I'm a hard leave it.
What about you, Keenan? Take it or leave it.
Leave it. The persuasion isn't supposed to happen in the discovery. No. I can't see how much time we have, so I'm going to get set up for the horn. But my daughter's in the room right now, and the doctor was so good. He sat and asked question after question after question after question after question. At no point in time did he start talking about trying to solve it, and you should consider this and you should consider that. He just kept asking questions. He's not sure what it is, right? He's not sure. So he's not offering any solution or anything. Now, when he comes back, he will, but no. Do not do it in discovery. It's the learning mode.
We should go into the doctor's camp. Go ahead. Third one.
Oh, the third one is selling based on a buyer's emotional state. Keenan, take it or leave it.
I'm not sure what this means, but I'm going to say, I already know what I think Beck's going with this. I'm saying leave it if you're trying to push their emotional buttons. But if you're gap selling, believe it or not, that's all you're doing is selling to their emotion, because as you build the size of the gap and they start to understand the size of the problem we're in, the term intolerable is an emotional term.
Sorry, continue.
Keep going.
No, that's okay. I can't see, so I knew it was.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. So the whole point of gap selling is to drive enough emotion around the problem that they recognize that the lack of addressing it or fixing it is more problematic than not. But the flip side is if that emotion isn't there and their problem isn't big enough to fix it, salespeople need to say, hey, this you shouldn't do anything. You're fine. Don't at least don't go with us. Either don't do anything or do it yourself. So the answer is yes, take it, but not the way everybody takes it.
Okay. And with that, we are on to the next segment of this podcast, which is
The inbox.
this is the segment where Keenan and Becc answer questions from our audience. And to help with that, we have our lovely mailbox. Let's see who sent in a letter today.
If it would have been just me, I would have torched the mailbox. I'm just saying. I would have killed that off.
This one is from Stanley Miller from Orlando, Florida. He asks, I think I'm about to win President's Club for the first time. Is it
Good.
worth going on the actual trip or should I collect the cash reward? In all honesty, I'd rather keep the money, but others say I should do it for networking's sake. Becc, what are your thoughts on this one?
Oh my
That's a
God.
great one.
Interesting question. Well, they led with their gut. Their gut is they want to take the money because it's better for them. Who are you going to network with? Sales reps internally? Like I come from the belief or school of thought it's usually sales reps, they network for a positive business gain. And so if you're just going to be surrounded with a whole bunch of sales reps now, I have a lot of questions basically, but if it were me, I would take the cash and stay home. A, I think it's a power move. B, I think it's ridden with a bunch of drunken debauchery. Number 3, I don't think that prospects are impressed when you put that on your LinkedIn profile. And number 4, I don't think that you build any relationship talking over 16 Mai Tais with your boss about some idea that you had 17 months ago and how you should absolutely do that, man. And like Leonard Skinner's playing in the background. So I'm stay at home, take the cash, buy some clothes with it is my take, Keenan.
So a couple of things. First, I'm curious where it is. Okay, if it's something stupid like Vegas, okay, that's different. But I'm a huge fan of experiences, and if these are done right, they should be places that you're probably not going to pay to go yourself. Like one of mine one year was at Safari in Africa. I would have been an asshole to miss that, right? So I think where it is plays a role. I think secondly is what do you want out of this organization? Are you short on this organization and you're going to be getting a new job in 2 to 3 years? Then maybe not go. If you're long on this organization, you absolutely better show your ass up. Because your ability to get there and build relationships with the CEO and build relationships with the CRO and other people in the organization and demonstrate yourself as a leader and get the visibility is critical. And I think the last piece is, and this is, I'm assuming this person is young, so I'm going to show my age here. And Becc fell into the trap. But as a business owner, if I'm doing something called President's Club, because it's providing experiences that people normally wouldn't do themselves, designed to bring people together and build camaraderie and build a culture, and everybody wants the fucking money, well, fuck you then. There's no more President's Club. I am not going to build a President's Club to write you all checks. That's what you get commission plans for. So if you don't see value in showing up and everybody else feels that way, then fuck it. I got a new line item in my expense account. In my expense line item that I can give back. Because these things are expensive. If you don't see the value, fuck it. Don't go, and I'm taking it all back. So be real careful.
Amen. Amen. All right, we're on to the next question of today. And this one is from our good friend and follower, Kevin Chambers from Greenville, South Carolina. He asks, I'm struggling with when to ask problem questions versus process questions in my discovery calls. Too often, I'll get stuck in process questions up front, which goes nowhere. However, if I try to ask problem questions up front, the buyer seems to revolt and go into child ego state. How can I get better at this? Keenan, what are your thoughts?
You see what he said, child ego state. He should get a popsicle just for that alone. Right? Well done, Kevin. Look, here's my take. And I don't mean to dog you, Kevin, but if you're asking a bunch of process questions and they're going nowhere, one of two things is happening. Either the customer has no problem and therefore get out, or you don't understand the problems that come from those broken processes. So if you're asking broken process questions, you should be able to uncover what's broken in that process and be able to say, oh, well, because that process is broken, Use sales example. Oh, so your sales team never updates Salesforce. Tell me more about that. Do you find then, therefore, it's more difficult to forecast because you don't know what deals are good, what deals are not? No, we don't have a hard time forecasting. Okay, do you find a whole bunch of deals slip and some pull in and that saves your ass? Actually, that is true. So you're not forecasting well. It's just that you get some in and some out. So you're just kind of getting lucky. Good point. Didn't see it that way. So if you can't see from a process question how that formulates into problems, and that's on you and you need to study, or there is actually no problem because the answers to the process questions are good. Starting with the problem question, you should only do 2 or 3, and then you should be able to go right to the process questions about why those problems exist.
Becc, you got 10 seconds. You want to close it out?
No, I get a reprieve because he can't see the timer.
Yeah.
That's something I would do to him, but not he would do to me.
True.
So it's horn, not no one. You clear. That wasn't me getting the horn, but I do have a take here.
100%. Go on.
So I think what Keenan was saying was dead on. Of you shouldn't just be asking questions just to ask questions. So when I'm asking a process question, it's to uncover a root cause. That I'm like, hey, are you round robining your leads when they're demo requests? I'm not asking that to look smart. I'm asking that because if they are round robining, there's probably a hemorrhage of their inbound demo requests. If I'm asking, like, how are you allocating territory, or what time of day are your reps typically? Can you tell me about the process of when they're crafting outreach versus when they're sending outreach? I'm asking that to diagnose if they're sending it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday morning, that it's usually a root cause that they should be sending Wednesday, Thursday, Friday afternoon, and that will drive the numbers. So I love what Kevin said, that going for the jugular with the business problem right off the bat, it can make buyers a little uncomfortable. That's why they say, like, hey, you should tell the truth to your doctor, because there's some things that it's really uncomfortable to tell people, a business problem included, like, hey, I'm missing quota and I have for the last 6 months. So usually people don't want to lead there, but I think to gain credibility and gain that rapport with the buyer is by asking the right process questions that help you. The reality is that if I were to ask you a certain amount of process questions, I could probably get a skinny on what the business problem is. If I ask you a whole bunch of things about, like, what you're eating, when you're eating it, how much you're working out, I can take a wild guess from, like, a weight perspective without seeing you. Likely, is that causing you to be underweight, overweight, for your height, etc. So I would ask those first, but not without goal. The goal of it is to be able to diagnose with any type of question. Great question, Kevin.
Well, hey, with that, we are on to the next segment of this podcast, which is
The challenge.
This is the segment where Keenan and Becc break down a challenging subject within the sales industry. And today's challenge is how to find the business problem after you found the technical problem. Keenan, why don't you start us off on this one?
Well, I feel like we're being
This was
redundant.
the Gap episode, and you're in a doctor's office. How dope!
I know. I feel like we're being redundant after we just answered that question for Kevin. I mean, that played right into it. So I don't want to be redundant.
Why don't you start with the difference between a technical problem and a business problem?
All right, I can do that. Thank you, Becc. So the difference between a technical problem and a business problem is a business problem. Well, I'll start this way. A technical problem is a problem with a tool or process. So a technical problem is a broken tool or broken process. 90% of the time, your root causes will be technical problems or business problems. Mm-hmm. The business problem is the result of that technical problem manifesting itself. Business problems cannot be solved directly. Okay, you only can solve them by solving the technical problems. Mm-hmm. So I'm late to work every day. That is a business problem. You can't just show up on time. You have to fix the process. Why are you late? You're late because you don't have a car. Car's broken. Tool. You're late because you don't get up on time. That's a process. You're late because you get up on time, but you end up dilly-dallying. That's a process, right? You missed the train. Broken process. So you just have to fix one of those broken processes and you will fix the business problem. So that's the main difference, is business problems can't be fixed directly. Here's another one, revenue. Revenue cannot be fixed directly. Yeah. If you're missing a revenue target, you can't just walk in and say, new revenue, please. You have to figure out what's broken. Business problem, what technical problem is broken? Is it a broken process, broken tools? It's all the above. By the way, people are processes or tools, however you want to look at it. So that's the difference. And I'll toss it off to you, Becc, from there.
1 sack of cash, please.
Yeah.
I'll have a sack of cash thing, the pot of gold. So kind of building off of what Keenan said, when it comes to technical problems and business problems, what I have found, and I'll never forget when Keenan was explaining the difference to me. I remember we were walking and I was like, what's the difference? And technical problems is where I'm going to be nice and say 99% of sales reps live, breathe, eat, and die. Is they're like, my alarm clock's broken. And they're like, great, we sell those. And they're like, how broken is it? Is it really broken? And then like they're pain-centric selling, and then they stay there. About 1% trip ass backwards, so to speak, into a business problem. But the business problem is to Keenan's point, the metric that they're looking to affect that's tied to their buyer persona. So it's a lagging indicator, whereas a technical problem is a leading indicator. So I can't just drop 50 pounds. I can't just buy that online. Like I have to change a certain amount of leading indicators, the way that I'm eating, the way that I'm working out, et cetera, to affect that lagging indicator. So if they give you all the technical problems, they're like, I, want healthier foods to eat, or I want some kind of workout plan. If you don't know from a metric perspective, like what lagging indicator are they trying to drive, then you risk maybe they're changing the wrong leading indicators, or maybe they're changing them in the wrong way, or maybe they're changing an incomplete set of leading indicators or technical problems that even if they change them, it won't get them their lagging indicator. So the problem is the thing that they're trying to solve. So if you say like, hey, I have crappy emails, and they're like, great, we supply better emails, maybe the quality of the email isn't the only thing that needs to be changed in order to affect hitting that meeting quota. So once you have the technical problem, like a great quick way to anchor, and I love that Keenan goes into this in his book, there's only like 3 to 5 business problems. What he means by that, I would venture to say, you can correct me if I'm wrong, so there's only 3 to 5 like lagging indicators that buyer personas are trying to solve. If I'm a BDR, it's SQL, maybe influence pipeline, booked meetings, voila. If I'm a sales rep, it's going to be closed won. If I'm an HR representative, it's going to be ENPS score, employee churn, employee tenure, roles open, voila. There's only a certain amount. So you just start there by researching those, knowing what industry limits normally are. But once they give you the technical problem, you're asking questions around like that, but you're leveraging over to find out how does that affect what business problem for them from a metric perspective. And that's how you can acquire both. We're in Gapville.
100%. Should we go on?
Keenan's the mayor of Gapville in the doctor's office.
Gapville, baby.
Shall we go on to the next challenge for
Yes.
today? The next challenge for today is how to find and quantify a risk-based problem. So, Becc, why don't you start us off on this one?
Oh, this is a technical one. Okay, so risk-based problem is going to be something in the future, like a threat-based problem is how I think about it. And Keenan, you correct me if I'm wrong, but there's something that they're afraid of that's going to happen in the future. So there's 2 things that are going to go into a risk-based problem or a threat-based problem in the future. Number 1, the impact of the problem. And number 2, the likelihood that they believe that it's going to happen. If the impact's really, really high, but the likelihood is close to 0, I'm probably not going to solve it. And vice versa. If it's really risky that I'm going to accidentally eat a whole bunch of gummy bears in the middle of the night, but the impact's low, then like I'm not going to solve for it. So the first thing that I would think about is where am I at from those 2 levers? And the gap for me, and this is me going out on a limb, but the gap for me is the current state to what happens to this person if that threat or that risk actually becomes realized. What is the gap from it not being realized to it being realized? And that's going to be combined with 2 things: the pain that would hypothetically happen in the future and the impact from that pain that would happen in the future. So for me, it was almost a threat-based problem when I was buying that new phone. The threat was that my phone would knock out, I wouldn't finish the marathon, and the impact was that I believe I'm a fraud for the rest of my life. So I thought that threat was actually likely to become true, meaning I wouldn't finish the marathon, and the impact were both of those were high enough to where I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and try and solve this. So my current state was actually pretty okay, not a lot of pain. But that threat becoming true was high enough in my head that I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and make the purchase. Keenan, how'd I do?
You did pretty good. I mean, you did pretty good. You kind of messed up the boxes a little, but you did good, right?
Oh,
So in a risk-based environment, the bottom line is there is no current state problem.
yeah.
You can't sell to it. There isn't one. There's no current state problem to sell to. The current state problem is the perception of the risk.
Fear. I would think
Yes.
it's fear. Yeah.
Well, that depends. It depends, right? So the only time somebody buys to solve a risk is, as you said, Becc, if the perception of the risk happening, the probability is super high. So, yep, that's going to happen any day now. And if it happens, the impact is going to kill me or crush me, then that's the top right corner. High impact, high probability of happening. People solve that every day, all the time, with amazing sense of urgency.
Totally.
The other one below that is low probability of happening, and if it does happen, low impact. No one ever solves that. They ignore it. So the majority of your sales, everybody pay attention here. If you're selling something against risk, so cybersecurity is an example, insurance is an example, things like that, where what you solve for, what you as a person solve for, hasn't happened yet, but if it happens, they're going to be in trouble. That's a risk-based sale. And the way you sell that is you need to understand that the only customers you have that haven't bought yet is they're in one of the boxes, but not both. So they either think, yeah, this could happen any day, but if it happens, no big deal. Then your job is to show them that if it actually does happen, it's a bigger impact than they realize. So your focus in your sale is, you don't think it's a big deal? Let me ask you a few questions, and you drive the impact to high. Or they think, yeah, this will kill us if it happens, but shit, it's never going to happen. Then you need to recognize that. And all your questions and all your selling needs to get them to realize, well, the probability is a lot higher than you think. Did you know? Are you aware of? Could you walk me through this? How are you doing this? Oh, you're not doing that? Do you guys by not doing that and increase your probability? Oh, I didn't know. Oh, probability just went up. So that's how it works. You've got to understand where you are, high probability, low impact, or high impact, low probability, and you got to turn the dial on the other one to get them up into the both categories, high on both sides.
There was a guy I'm thinking of who is in one of those categories where basically he believed that he bought an alarm system from a vendor. And the reason that he did was he knew that the impact was he had a small child, right? So if someone broke in, it's going to be a really high impact. His child's at risk. But he didn't think it was high probability until there were several break-ins around the
right there.
he didn't know about. So the alarm salesman basically went door to door looking for people with kids and was like, hey, did you know these 3 break-ins have happened? And he said it was the first door-to-door salesperson that he was bought from because that became more true.
He moved the probability needle.
Totally.
Yep.
After 40 episodes, men, have you learned nothing? We are experts at the horn.
I know. I don't even know what I try anymore. But with that, we are on to the next segment of this podcast, which is...
Oh, listen, just one more thing.
This is the last segment of our podcast where Becc and Keenan share what's on their mind and give us their closing thoughts. So, Keenan, why don't you give us your just one more thing?
Yeah, my one thing, I'll make it short. It's powerful. Several times last year and over the last 12 months for sure, and maybe the last 18 months, I've gone on the record, but not as powerfully as I wish I had, that said I think outbound's dead. And I said I think it's dead. I think it's dead. I said it's dead, but I wasn't willing to just punch everybody in the nose with it. But it kept telling me, now I'm there. Outbound is dead. Sorry, Becc. Outbound is dead. I will not invest a dime in outbound anymore, and I will not tell my clients to invest a dime in outbound. Now, there are different ways to drive unique inbound, and we can talk about that another time. But the idea of SDRs and outreach and sales loft, dialing for dollars and all of that, to think you're going to build a business around that is dead. And here's the best one. I know there's a bunch of people out there who are going to be outliers and tell you it works for them, but I don't play the outlier game. Because there have been people who've jumped out of airplanes and survived with a parachute not opening. I'm not doing that anytime soon. So in the main, outbound is no longer a good investment, and it's time we change.
Ooh,
Intéressant.
Spicy. Okay, Becc, what is your just one more thing?
He's a dying man. He's at the hospital, so he's got a lot of deathbed admissions. So my one last thing, and I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible, is I went through one of the best discovery processes I have ever been through very recently. It was yesterday. So long and the short of it is, I was looking for an outfit for a conference next week. And I had walked by one store a couple of times, and I went in and I said, like, hey, I need this skirt and this top in these sizes. She started asking a couple questions. I was like, actually, I have a training. I'll come back later this afternoon. So I came back and she said a number of different questions, but she said, if you don't mind me asking, what kind of event is this for? And I said, oh, well, this is for, it's a conference. She was like, how many people are going to be there? And I said, oh, there's going to be a few thousand. And she said, do you have anything picked out already? And I said, I do. I actually bought a pair of awesome, dope pants. She said, tell me about them. I said, well, they're Prabal Jarong. They're a new red. She was like, what makes them so great? I was like, well, they're interesting. They're brand new. They're from his fall collection. But most interestingly, I bought them on a Saturday when they were first released, like basically at midnight, and they're sold out now. So they're very, very rare, and they are high from his line. So she said, okay, so tell me about these two pieces. Why did you pick these two pieces? I said, well, I think they're super chic. I really, really like them. And I said, but my main question is, out of these two pieces, which one do you like more? If you could only buy one of these pieces, which one would you buy more? She goes, let me ask a couple more questions and I'll answer you. I was like, okay. She's like, I've seen you walk by every single day. She's like, are you into fashion? I said, yes, I am into fashion. You couldn't tell how I'm dressed now. She's like, who are your favorite designers? I was like, Balmain, Oscar de la Renta, Alexander Wang, Bear Wang, Alexander McQueen. She said, so when it comes to these items, why did you pick them? I'm like, again, I think they're super chic and I think they're cutting edge. And she said, did you see Fashion Week? And I said, yes, I did. She said, did you see the Zadig and Voltaire, which is the name of the brand? She said, did you see the Zadig and Voltaire cat show or catwalk? Did you see the runway show? And I said, no, I didn't. Her eyes lit up. And I was like, interesting. She goes, did you see the tag on the inside of these two items? And I said, no, I didn't. She said, and I read it. I said, it says Defease. And she goes, do you know what it means? Or have you come across it before? And I said, no, I haven't. She said, so this tag on the inside means there's only a certain amount. People do runway shows and catwalk shows, but essentially it's just to influence the industry because you can't wear stuff on the runway on the actual street. But a few items make it from the runway to the street. So she said, this tag signifies that they were on the actual runway. And I was like, really? So I said, how many of these items made it to the street, to this collection? She said, how many of these actual items? Probably a handful of them in Paris and worldwide. She said, but how many actual collector's items made it to the store? She said, 3. And you have 2 of them. And I said, I will buy both. She took me from, I'm only going to buy 1 to I'm going to buy 2 because she found 2 root causes that I didn't know about. Number 1, that I value rarity. And number 2, that I wanted to feel like coming back from Paris, that I was on the runway. She was like, is this your first trip back? And I'm like, yes. So everyone's going to be expecting me to dress Parisian fashion. So point being, she never asked me, do you like runway fashion? One of the benefits of this is it's off the runway, because it wouldn't have mattered to most people, but it mattered to me. And the reason she knew that is she asked a certain amount of questions. So she created buyer intent out of thin air. So that is my one last thing. Discovery works if you can find the things that people don't know. Keenan, do you want to close out? Wait, you're on mute.
Here we go. All right, everybody. Listen, I'm sorry I was late, Becc, but everybody, y'all have...
Wait, you're still on mute.
You're mute again.
You're on mute. You're on mute. I think he said, I'm going to guess that he said, that's the end of this episode. It was episode 40. It was a lit episode. It was an insane episode. Thank you to everyone for joining along. You have just watched episode 40 of Sales Top to Bottom. See you next week.